Hello and welcome to the School Mentor Podcast. My name is Miff Martinek. This is episode 20 and this is a podcast where we talk about all things coaching and mentoring within the school setting. Now this week we're going to talk about the ripple effect of positive role modelling. It's a topic that I absolutely love and it's something that can be super powerful in the school setting and really, really easy to do. It doesn't take extra time. It doesn't mean that you need to be an expert in any way. It's all about that tiny thing that we can do and the ripple effect that it has in our community. So I want to start by sharing a little bit about one of the exercises we do in the courses that I run. So whenever I run a course with pupils, I start off by getting the pupils to sort a series of cards with attributes on them into a rank of importance. So the things that are most important to being a role model, to being a mentor, and things that are least important. And in amongst that bunch is the word a good role model. But what happens quite a lot of the time is that role model kind of gets bumped to the middle of the pack. They sort of don't see it as being super important, but they also don't see it as being, a negative thing or really unimportant. It sort of gets left around that like number 4, 5, 6 spot. And it always sparks a conversation. And the conversation always goes that a role model is someone who is looked up to, who is doing really well in life, is someone that is achieving all the things they want to achieve, that sets a good example. Good behaviour always comes up. And we talk around this this sort of definition of what being a good role model is. So I went online and I had a look at what how the internet defines being a role model. So I did try and go with some fairly credible sources. But a role model online in a couple of different dictionaries is defined as a person looked to by others as an example to be imitated, which was interesting. There were a lot of other ones that talked about good behaviour, as the pupils that I work with highlighted as well. But the one that I really loved was, and I'm going to read this to you, a significant other upon which an individual patterns his or her behaviour in a particular social role, including adopting appropriate similar attitudes. And I really loved that because it focuses on a couple of things. The first one is that it focuses on someone being significant. Significant other is the way that we describe our spouse or, our girlfriend or boyfriend or, our partner in life. A significant person to us. So I want to focus on that a little bit, but I also want to focus on that last piece of the sentence, including adopting appropriate similar attitudes. So the attitudes part is the bit that's super interesting to me, because when I look at what a role model is, I don't agree necessarily that a role model is someone who is achieving lots of great results. And I don't agree that it's always just down to their behaviour being in line with the expectation. A lot of the time, the best thing that a role model can offer us is an attitude to follow. Now, I've reflected on this myself recently. There's someone that I follow on LinkedIn, and she talks all about kind of personal branding and personal image. And I was interested in her because, I'm growing a business and it's something that I want to be aware of, and something that I felt that I'd lost a little bit of when I had the children. I used to be kind of quite sporty, strength and conditioning. That was kind of the thing that I did. And then the mentoring fitted in with that sort of persona, if you like. And I felt a little bit more lost since having the children because I haven't gone back to strength and conditioning. And so I was then trying to figure out, well, what is my personal brand, if you like? And I'm sure it's just something that I've been overthinking a vast amount. But what I realised is I've been observing this person via LinkedIn. She's an incredibly successful business owner. but her image is so incredibly different to mine. And I saw in my head, and the way that she presents herself and the way that she speaks is very different to me. And I could see myself thinking, oh my goodness, I need to be more like her. I need to adopt her behaviour. I need to start to look more like her. Can you see where this is going? It's kind of going down this track of, rather than picking and choosing the right bits to imitate, I was sort of just doubting my own, who I was as a person, because I could see that someone else was successful and I was just trying to copy the things that they were doing. But what made them successful isn't what's going to make me successful. But what I could take from her was her attitude and the structure through which the lens through which she saw her value. Those are valuable things for me to take away from that. And what I realised when I was thinking about that and applying it back into the setting that we work within with young people, is we all know that young people are always watching and always absorbing things. I had a hilarious time last week. I was looking after my best friend's son, who's very, very good friends with my daughter Evelyn. And Evelyn's only 3.5, as is her son. And they were playing at being grown-ups. Now, my friend is amazing, but she's incredibly forgetful. She will lose her keys and phone without fail every single time she comes round. And I, for all my faults, I can be quite directive. I can be, for want of a better word, I can be quite bossy. And Evelyn and Alfie were through there playing, and all I could hear from the other room was Evelyn saying, right, this is what we are going to do, and setting out the steps. And, she was like a mini me, setting out these steps as to what she was doing. And Alfie, bless him, was there going, I can't find my phone. Have you seen my keys? And it was so incredibly clear that they were just, they weren't playing at being Miff and Becca. They were playing at being adults, at being grown-ups. But because we are the most significant grown-ups in their lives, that's what they were imitating. And so you could see from that they're not necessarily picking up our best traits, but they're picking up probably some really noticeable ones. When we start to think about how we operate as role models with young people, we can start to recognise which elements of us we would really want them to take on and which elements of us aren't the best. And so how do you then help a young person absorb those brilliant bits of you and recognise the other parts of you aren't necessarily the strongest? Well, the first thing that you can do is to approach it with some compassion, and I call it a compassionate analysis. You want to think about who you are as a human being, all the different roles that you are in. So for me, my roles are as an educator, as a trainer, as a businesswoman, as a mother, as a spouse, as me just as a person by myself. I think about my mental and my physical fitness, and I think about these different elements of who I am, and I can slowly kind of break down these different parts of me and have a sense, whether I scored them out of 10 or whatever, however I wanted to do it, I would have a sense of my value and how I felt I was doing in those different areas. So that is the first step for this, is that we want to create a little bit of space for you to do a compassionate analysis, not competitive, but a compassionate analysis of where you're up to and what areas you might like to showcase for the young people around you, and what areas you might notice that you think, gosh, I could improve there a little bit. Because when you do that little piece of work, when you notice that actually I have a huge amount of ambition and I approach it in a really positive way, and that's a fantastic thing for young people to see. But do you know what? I'm not the best person when it comes to leadership, or that I'm an incredible leader, but I'm not the best when it comes to being a servant, when it comes to serving other people. There might be different areas of your life. And the one that I missed off, I'm looking at my notes as I go through this. The one that I missed off is gratitude. How much am I practicing gratitude? That's a really important one for me as well. So when I look at these different elements of my life, and I've broken them down. For me, I break them down into 8 elements. But I look at these different elements, and I'll just recap what those are in a moment. And I start with a compassionate analysis, trying to take down my defensive guard and say, right, how do I feel in these different areas? And so my areas for me are ambition, gratitude, physical fitness, mental fitness. And then so those are my sort of internal bits. So my ambition, my physical fitness, my mental fitness, my gratitude. That's all about me and who I am. And then I look at the bit about me interacting with other people around me. How am I as a leader, as a servant, as a companion, and as a friend? And I look at how I operate in all of those environments. Now, for me, being a leader, part of that is being a mum. You know, I have very young children, so I have to lead them and I have to lead my family. But I also have to serve them a lot of the time. And I find that much harder than being the person that sets out the rules. I find it much harder to always be the person that is serving my family in a gracious way, because a lot of the time I think, no, I can't be bothered with this. I want to get back to the leading. I want to get back to the bit that where I feel like I'm thriving. Yeah. And so I need to do some work there. But the way that you first bit that you do is this awareness piece. And what happens when you bring awareness to that is you are able to then highlight which elements. Yours might be the same as mine, they might be different. You might think about those 8 and think, I want to add one in and take one away, or whatever's important to you. And that's not a set thing, it's just an idea for you. You want to take this analysis that you do and you want to start choosing how you want to show up and how you want to role model these different elements of who you are. And you will do that really naturally on the ones you feel strong in. But you are also, whether you like it or not, being a role model for the ones that you are weaker in. And so the way that you role model effectively in the ones where you are weaker is you do it with humility, and you do it by sharing your experience of developing the skill. So you share the fact that this is something that you are struggling with right now. If I were to give you the example of physical fitness recently, I as I share pretty much in every episode, 2 young children. I've had a couple of pregnancies relatively close together. And during that time, I completely lost that piece of my identity. I used to run fitness classes. I used to be in the gym 7 days a week where I was coaching or training myself. I was a fit person, and it was a real part of my identity. And I lost it. I completely lost it during my pregnancies. For whatever reason, pre-existing injuries and things, I really struggled to exercise during my pregnancies, and I judged myself quite harshly for that. And because of that, I then really struggled to get back to it. And it took me a long time and an incredible trainer to get me back to feeling strong and confident in my physical fitness. And so when I thought about how I role modeled that, it was something that would always come quite easily to me. When I thought about how I role modeled that, I thought about how I would share the struggles that I was facing. I thought about sharing what was going through my mind when I was standing in front of a bar and thinking, I can't lift that. I used to be able to lift twice as much. I can't lift this in front of me. My back hurts, my side aches, everything was uncomfortable and sore. And having a bit of humility and sharing that journey meant that when I was then speaking to young people about their fitness, as and when it came up, that I could do it in a positive way, and I could role model how to look after your health and fitness, even though I wasn't where I wanted to be. We are role modeling the journey, not just the outcome. The last thing that we need in this world for our young people is any more polished, finished articles. They get all of that and more on TikTok and on Instagram. They don't need any more polished, finished articles. What they need is us to be work in progress, and they need us to show them that that's okay, and that is how you get towards the end goal that you want to get to. But it takes humility on our side, and it takes a bit of compassion for ourselves to say, these are my weaknesses. And when we do that, we actually give ourselves the opportunity to ask for help. We give ourselves the opportunity to grow. Because before doing all of this, we were just ignoring them and hoping nobody had noticed. But when we acknowledge what our weaknesses are and view them in a compassionate way, that compassionate analysis, then we can start asking for help when we need it. We can start finding ways of feeling stronger. One of the things that I see being said in school a lot is that the children come first. And while I wholeheartedly agree that the well-being of children should be paramount to us, the unsaid half of that sentence is at the detriment of us. We know that teachers are burning out. We know that the staff in school are struggling with their own mental well-being, with their own drive and their own focus being taken away from them with the external things that are going on, both in school and in the wider world at the moment, politically particularly. But when we allow ourselves time to compassionately look at where we are up to, we can find those tiny little tweaks, those one little things that we can start to shift and change and move us to a place that is better for our own well-being, but will also role model for the young people around us how to move through life and move through the difficulties that life faces. I hope this has given you just a little soundbite, a little thought of what you were doing as a role model, and maybe a slightly different perspective. It isn't about demonstrating perfection 24/7 and never letting that slip. It's about thinking about that attitude that people bring and about earning your place as someone who is significant to these young people. That's all we've got time for in today's session. I have loved bringing that one to you today. This week on the Mentors Packed Lunch, we are focusing on the Well Leader, and I would love for you to jump into any of our sessions, really. They are turning into a lovely forum where people can bring all kinds of issues that they're facing within the school setting, and we're getting advice from all over. In fact, it's becoming quite global. We're getting teachers joining from all over the place and sharing their experience. So if you like what we're doing on the podcast, that's another place where you can be a little bit more interactive with me, with other teachers who are all striving for improved well-being through a coaching and mentoring approach. That's it from me for today. I will see you next week. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the School Mentor Podcast. We hope you're leaving today's episode feeling inspired to create a stronger, more connected school community. To access more resources, be sure to visit our website at this-is-me.uk. It would mean the world to us if you subscribed, rated and reviewed our podcast, and shared it with your fellow educators. Until next time, thank you for inspiring, mentoring, and changing the lives of the young people in your community.